bringing you the facts on drought conditions in our area. It's the KTXS Severe Drought Special.
Welcome to the KTXS Drought Special. I'm KTXS Chief Meteorologist Mark Rowlett. We've been trying to deal with abnormally warm and dry weather for almost 3.5 years. From lost crops to wildfires to rationed drinking water, this weather-driven danger is still with us. So the question is, how did we get where we are today? Our current drought has plagued the state for most of this decade. Officially, it's lasted 46 months, beginning in October of 2010. The drought shifted into high gear as we moved into 2011, breaking records, devastating the state's agriculture, and spurring wildfires that scorched thousands of homes and millions of acres. In the big country, records that had stood for decades were tied or toppled. For example, in Abilene, June of 2011 was the second hottest June on record. July was the hottest July on record and the warmest month ever recorded. But that record didn't last long as even hotter weather moved in, pushing August into first place for the hottest month ever recorded in Abilene. For 2011, Abilene saw 81 days with high temperatures at or above 100, a new record that smashed the old record of just 46 days. And get this, 21 of those days had high temperatures of 105 or higher. When it came to rain, West Texas didn't fare much better. For the entire year, San Angelo only received 9.21 inches of rain, the third driest on record. Abilene did pick up a bit more rainfall, just shy of 17 inches, but that was still far below average. As a state, we suffered billions of dollars in agriculture losses. Big country ranchers were forced to sell off thousands of head of cattle due to an inability to feed and water them. Farms that weren't irrigated lost most, if not all, their crops. Wildfires posed a different set of dangers as more than 31,000 fires statewide scorched about 4 million acres. After it was all said and done, almost 3,000 homes were destroyed. Wildfires in 2012 were not as numerous as we lost some of the extreme heat. In 2012, the number of days with triple-digit temperatures in Abilene fell to 40. However, a more persistent heat developed. The average annual temperature in Abilene was the highest on record, making 2012 the hottest year ever recorded for Abilene. 2013 saw the extreme heat continuing to wane. The average annual temperature was only slightly above normal, and rainfall was just 1.63 inches below normal in Abilene. 100-degree days fell to just 19, just one day above the normal of 18. 2014 started cold, turned warm in the spring, and until recently has been mild for much of the summer. However, rainfall in Abilene is 4 inches below normal for the year. So where does that leave us? In the almost 4-year drought, so far we're 18 inches short on rainfall, or quite simply, in a very critical situation. To get another perspective of this drought, I talked with state climatologist Dr. John Nielsen Gammon to find out how the drought is today. Well, we have been in a drought, obviously. I think that's an understatement. How are we looking right now compared to where we have been?
We're a little bit better off than we have been at this time the past few years. Most of the state has gotten near to above normal rain in both May and June, and we're getting at least 1 week of July with rain also. So agriculturally, at least, things are looking much better than they had been. The problem, I think, is with the water supply situation. We still haven't gotten substantial amounts of runoff. So even though reservoirs are statewide a little bit better than they were last year, there's still a long way to go.
So have we seen the worst, or we are just kind of on cautious optimism right now?
Well, we've probably seen the worst year, with 2011 having about 40% of normal rainfall. That's pretty much unheard of in the historic record. But this is still only the second worst drought on record overall. The 1950s drought lasted for about 7 years, and this one's only been going for a little bit less than 4 years. So it's always possible we'll see more dry weather ahead, and of course, the longer the drought goes on, the bigger the water supply problems tend to be.
In the context of global climate change, do you see this drought as a symptom of that, or is this just the normal vagaries of weather?
it's for the most part normal. Certainly the rainfall variations are pretty much caused by a combination of randomness of the weather and tendency for certain ocean temperature patterns to affect our weather in certain ways. And for the past decade or so, both the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean have been inducing weather patterns that are unfavorable for rainfall in Texas during different parts of the year. However, temperatures during this drought are warmer than they've been during previous droughts, and that's part of the long-term increase of temperatures that we've seen. So that impacts droughts because it means there's greater evaporation, so the soil doesn't stay moist as long. You lose water from reservoirs faster, there's less stream flow, and at the same time, more water demand by plants. So I think that climate change is making this drought a little bit harder to deal with than previous droughts.
Well, to help deal with our drought, here's a water conservation tip you might want to try. We'll have more of our weather drought special coming up. Welcome back, everyone. Reliable sources for drinking water are serious issues all throughout the big country, but it is a major problem in MUNDAY. The town and surrounding areas are in danger of losing their water source because of the current drought. KTXS reporter Christian Collins went there and to Miller Creek Reservoir to get the facts.
Every drop of rain is important in MUNDAY as they face stage 4 water restrictions. City Manager Ricky Akey says the Miller Creek Reservoir is currently at 13% total capacity and may run out soon.
It's hard to say the exact number of days that we have left in water. The projected date right now is the 1st of November if everything stays the same.
Here at the Miller Creek Reservoir, looking at this tower, you can see just how high the water is supposed to be. The MUNDAY City Council voted to start stricter water restrictions last November. Residents are fined $25 if they use more than 5,000 gallons of water. That fine goes up another $25 for every additional 1,000 gallons. Residents are also not allowed to water outside, wash cars, or fill swimming pools. Akey says since the restrictions were introduced, the city is saving nearly 140,000 gallons of water each day. But they're also losing $250,000 in water sales each year. MUNDAY and surrounding communities were awarded $350,000 to begin drilling at this underground water source just south of town. Bids for contractors to start the project and potentially help ease the problem will begin on July 29th.
We can get by without gasoline, we can get by without electricity. We can't get by without water.
With the help of the community, the city plans to get back on track and get back to life as they knew it. Reporting from MUNDAY, Christian Collins, KTXS News.
Hubbard Creek is another lake with serious problems. In fact, it's at its lowest level it's been since it was created. Chelsea Humphrey recently visited this shrinking reservoir.
This is the lowest, saddest sight I've ever seen in my life.
The Hubbard Creek Reservoir near Breckenridge is a major water supplier for thousands of big country residents. And right now, it's less than 20% full. According to the Texas Water Development Board, current levels are the lowest they've been since the lake was created in the early 1960s. Now, even residents who've been here for more than 30 years can't believe how low it's gotten.
Moved here in June of 1982. The lake was not full then. But oh my, no comparison to now.
Sherry Kinsey says her family has been coming to the Hubbard Creek Reservoir for decades, and it was part of the reason they wanted to spend their lives in Breckenridge.
My family lived in West Texas, and this is where we always came and played. And when we had so much fun, when my parents decided to retire, they bought property down here. This is where we retired to. And so we bought property down here because this is where we were going to retire to. Because there was water, there was fish, and oh my, we could catch some of the biggest crappie in the world back in the day. And not now. Not now.
Eddie Knight has lived on the lake for 7 years and recalls some of the better times.
It's been right up to these trees right here, almost to the fence right here. That's been 2.5 years, I guess.
As you head into town, you drive right over the Hubbard Creek Reservoir, but the only way you'd know it is the sight of boat ramps no longer open to the public and small pockets of lake water. Even an old highway and its bridge supports have been exposed as lake levels fell. For residents who once had lakefront property, this new view leaves a lot to be desired.
I miss, the cool evenings, the wind coming off the lake and, the moonlight and things like that. And the fishermen out here, you can visit with them when they're bass fishing, things like that. I miss that.
Despite the dire state of things now, residents we spoke with are optimistic that the water will return one day.
Oh, someday God's going to send the rain. The rain's going to come and fill up the lake. Yes, maybe not even in my lifetime, but someday.
Oh, and it will. It's been down once and it came back again, but it's going to take quite a bit of rain, I believe, for it to, get to the point where it can be, productive to the community. It's going to be a while, I'm sure. But we're hopeful.
Well, take a look at the U.S. Drought Monitor. This is from back in August of 2011 when the state was at its worst. And you can see all the state is in a condition of drought. In our area, we are looking at the worst and the second worst drought levels that can be recorded in our area. Now look at the current map. It has improved greatly. In fact, southeast Texas, East Texas, not even in a drought. In our area, we still have drought conditions all throughout the big country, but they are nowhere near as severe as they were, well, about 3 years ago. We still have exceptional drought, which is the worst category up here around Possum Kingdom Reservoir and still up here in Knox County. Now, this map looks so much better than the one we just showed you, but it's the reservoirs that are still lagging and many of them are still falling around our area. So that is the real problem that we're still dealing with right now. Well, stay with us. We've got more of our drought special coming up, and here's another weather tip, drought tip that you can look at. Welcome back, everyone. The city of Early is looking to strike out on its own. After years of having neighboring city of Brownwood handle their wastewater, now they want to do it themselves and reap the savings. KTXS reporter Gabriela Hernandez has the facts on this story.
The city of Early is in their beginning steps to creating their own wastewater treatment plant. City Administrator Ken Thomas says with the growing population, they are always looking at ways to enhance.
Our sewer currently goes to the city of Brownwood, has for many years, but we are looking at the possibility of doing our own at this time.
The city gives the Brownwood plant up to 6.5 million gallons of sewage per month and pays $300,000 to $350,000 a year to use the plant.
This would allow us to contain the wastewater, use it for a land application for irrigation purposes. We've already had numerous individuals that have contacted us about acquiring irrigation water from the plant.
The city hopes to have this facility up and running in about a year to a year and a half. Reporting from Early, Gabriela Hernandez, KTXS News.
And while Early is looking to use treated wastewater for irrigation, other communities are trying to get more water from rain clouds. Meteorologist Anthony Dommel is here, and recently you visited one of those operations.
Yeah, Mark, a number of counties in the big country have decided to try cloud seeding. I went to Haskell County to see what they're doing. Most of Haskell, Knox, Jones, Fisher, and Stonewall counties are now paying a company to seed clouds. Brandon Anderson, Haskell County City Manager, says there's a good reason for the measure.
We need to be pursuing every avenue that we can right now in this drought situation. And this is one other opportunity that's out there. And some people don't believe in the science of cloud seeding, but then also there's a lot of information that backs up the fact that it does enhance rainfall totals.
The project began on June 20th and is set up to last 4 months. It will cost the counties collectively about $40,000 a month in an attempt to help create more rainfall for their citizens. We met with Gary Walker, Project Director and Chief Pilot of Seeding Operations and Atmospheric Research. He explains what cloud seeding is all about.
We cannot make it rain. We can only help get more rain out of a cloud that's suitable for seeding. All clouds are not suitable for seeding. Some clouds are very efficient in their raining, but most clouds are not efficient, and so therefore the precipitation enhancement process of injecting a nuclei for the rain droplets to attract to is what we try to do. When you inject the seeding particle, it attracts water droplets until the drop now becomes big enough to fall out. That's the simple explanation.
2 materials are used in the seeding process. Both types are placed into the clouds with flares carried on an aircraft. The first and most widely used is silver iodide. Its effects are aimed for the cold upper portion of a cloud. The second material is calcium chloride or salt. This reacts in the warm lower level of a cloud. So what kind of an increase in rainfall could be expected?
15% is kind of the industry standard that they use. When I'm doing some kind of a cost analysis, I generally back it down some from that, because people say you can't prove that. Many people think a cloud is like a pitcher of water, and once you pour it out, you know, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We always hear that. Aren't you robbing Peter to pay Paul? So if you see the cloud and it rains right here, somebody down that direction, if you know, whichever direction the cloud's moving, not going to get a rain. Totally incorrect, because the atmosphere has got lots of water in it, and so if we can generate a cloud to develop and get larger, not only will this place get more rain, so will the people downstream.
But there's one thing we know for certain: cloud seeding is not going to solve all the water problems. Brandon Anderson says without adequate amounts of water, communities suffer.
I think we have to be optimistic. I think the one thing, we live in West Texas and we're used to having drouthy periods, and this drought has sustained longer than we're used to having. Obviously, water is the most precious commodity that we have. If we don't have water, we really don't even have a community.
And what can you do to help conserve water in the drought? Take a look. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to our Drought Special. I recently talked with Abilene Mayor Norm Archibald about Abilene's water plans.
The short-term goals for Abilene is to make sure that we have adequate water while we're working on building a reservoir for the future. So one of the things that we undertook this year was to upgrade the Hamby wastewater treatment plant located out on Highway 351. And right now we have wastewater that we treat to a high level, and what we don't spend in giving to Dyess Air Force Base, golf courses, and university campuses around town, we were throwing away down the Dead Man's Creek, which ended up going into the Clear Fork of the Brazos. Well, that was water that we thought was a resource. So what we have done, and we began this spring, was to go in and do upgrades to that Hamby wastewater treatment plant. It's at a cost of about $65 million. And starting, we think, by December, sometime in December, we will take an average. Now, some days it might be more than 7 million gallons, some days it'll be less, but over a year's time, it will average 7 million gallons a day of water that will go from the Hamby treatment plant back into Fort Phantom. Now, 7 million gallons a day on average is 1/3 of all of our average daily use, which is about 21 to 22 million gallons a day. So to know that we have a resource already with us that we own and we operate, instead of throwing it away.
To also meet short-term water needs, Abilene recently completed a $19 million upgrade to the Hargesheimer water treatment plant to treat more water from Lake Ivy, up to 6 million gallons a day. But one concern is how low Ivy is right now. Abilene's long-term water project is Cedar Ridge Reservoir. There are 2 major permits that need to be obtained. One from the state for the rights to the water, and one from the Army Corps of Engineers for the permission to actually build the dam. There will be many hearings in the future, but Mayor Archibald is optimistic.
I could see Cedar Ridge up and running in the next 10 years. Because once we get the permit, we're going to want to know that we could build that and start catching water. I mean, the sooner you have the opportunity to catch water, the more you have an opportunity to impound in a reservoir. So we think that Cedar Ridge is an answer to our future with water.
I also asked the mayor what he would recommend the citizens of Abilene do. He said, conserve water and pray for rain. There's almost no way to plan for the future without money and aid from the state of Texas. Abilene and much of the big country is represented by Senator Troy Fraser, and Fraser knows water. He's chairman of the Senate Committee on Natural Resources. KTXS anchor George Levesque has a look at how the state is preparing for future droughts.
Something that people miss, they never think about, is that every year during a hot summer, we lose more water to evaporation than is used in the state.
Conservation, it's an important component of providing more water for Texas' future, but it can't get us there, not by itself, and at least not under current projections. Texas is losing water every day the hot sun shines on our lakes and rivers. But under the soil, there's water that hasn't been tapped.
We believe across West Texas, there's probably a 200-year supply of brackish water if we could bring it up and clean it up. The problem with it is that it's going to be expensive to do that. Water prices will rise if we have to start using this desalinated water. But long term, if we're going to survive, we're likely to have to do that.
And one part of the Texas plan is to take that salty, briny water, clean it. But we wouldn't put it back in a lake. We'd put much of it back underground.
We're actually compounding our own problem. So aquifer storage for sure is a big part of what we're going to have to do in the future of making sure we have water for people in Texas.
We also spoke with Fraser about a problem many scientists say they have with the Texas plan and long-term projections on drought, that they don't take into account a Texas temperature that appears to be slowly rising.
Climate change, obviously, there's a huge disagreement among scientists about the effect of it. I don't think we need to be designing a water plan around trying to predict what the weather's going to do. I think what we do is use the facilities we have, and taking advantage of those. That's one of the reasons we're looking at brackish water. I think long term we'll probably start desalinating seawater.
Either way, any plan enacted now won't have an effect on our current drought, but maybe the next drought will be one easier to manage. George Levesque, KTXS News.
Texas State climatologist Dr. Nielsen Gammon told me our current drought will end, but it's inevitable that we will have another one in the future. The plans we make today for water infrastructure and conservation will make us better prepared for the next one. Some possible good news: meteorologists are still forecasting that a moderate to weak El Nino will develop this winter. Most of the time, this warming of the Central Pacific will increase our wintertime rainfall. This is something we hope will happen. We will continue to follow this weather-influenced danger as our local and state leaders work to try to bring water security to all parts of our state. Thanks for watching.